Watch where you're going. This isn't a guided tour. Take your clipboard and find another corridor." He doesn't stop. Sergeant Major Boone rounds the corner at full march pace, stack of folders under one arm, 28 years of Barracks ownership in his stride, and his shoulder catches hers and drives her into the bulkhead. The sound is flat and institutional. Linoleum, paint, fluorescent tubes humming the same note they've hummed for 11 years. The smell of cleaning solution and someone else's discipline. The folder hits the deck. 2 junior Marines 20 feet down the corridor go rigid. Boone looks at her, the way you look at a table you've walked into. Irritation at the furniture. Not at yourself. He says what he says and keeps moving. He doesn't lower his voice. He doesn't check if anyone heard. Doesn't occur to him that anyone hearing would matter. She absorbs the contact, the way a post absorbs a leaning shoulder, completely, without shifting, without acknowledgement. The folder is on the deck. Her eyes do not follow it down. They move left, right, up. A systematic sweep, all 3 exits, the fire door at the corridor's far end, the 2 Marines standing frozen by the rack, the angle of the window and the quality of the light coming through it, the junction 60 feet back and the radius of view from that junction. 4 seconds, unhurried, automatic. The eyes of a woman cataloging a space she has already measured once and is now measuring again for different information. Then she is looking at the place where Boone was standing. Her expression has not moved. Her lanyard reads, DOD Civilian Inspector, S. Fitzpatrick. Business casual. No rank, no cover, no indication to anyone in this corridor that she arrived at 0700 hours and has spent the 90 minutes between then and now walking every accessible passage in this building, the enlisted corridors, the armory wing, the administrative section near the supply cage, with the same measured pace, the same clipboard, and the same handwritten notations that mean something entirely different from what they appear to mean. She picks up the folder, notes the time in the margin, 0807, continues the walkthrough as though the previous 30 seconds belonged to someone else's story. She does not look at the junior Marines. She does not look in the direction Boone went. She turns at the next doorway and proceeds into the corridor beyond it with the particular deliberateness of a person who has already cataloged what she needs and is moving on, because in every sense that matters, she has. At the far junction, a man in a worn contractor jacket holds a maintenance bucket at his side, late 50s, broad through the shoulders in a way that doesn't go away after 28 years. He has a facilities badge clipped to his front pocket and the posture of someone who has stood at a great many junctions and knows how to look like he's waiting on the bucket to do something. He saw the shove. He saw the 2 junior Marines go rigid and stay rigid. He saw the way she absorbed the impact. No stagger, no reactive adjustment, no delay before her next breath, and the way her folder hit the deck and the way she did not respond. The way someone who has just been shoved responds. But what is holding him at the junction now, 1 beat longer than a man curious about a hallway incident would hold, is what she did with her eyes after the shoulder connected. He knows that sweep. He knows exactly what kind of training generates that sweep. He cannot yet place where he has seen this specific person do it. He picks up the bucket. He moves on. His name is Hector Lozano. He retired from the Marine Corps 3 years ago at the rank of Sergeant Major after 28 years of service, the last decade of it in operational environments, where the way a person scanned a room on entry was more diagnostic than anything they said out loud. He knows what that sweep is. He will spend the rest of his shift, the corridor near the armory, the ballast in the supply cage, the long stretch of 4 o'clock, trying to remember where he has seen this person do it before. He will remember on day 4, in the middle of the night. The building itself is the institution. Every linoleum seam in this corridor was laid on Boone's schedule. Every inspection log is filed with his initials in the review column. He has worked through 4 battalion commanding officers in 11 years, and 4 sets of priorities, and 4 versions of what readiness means, and he has accommodated all of them without adjusting a single thing that matters to him, because a sergeant major who owns his corridor accommodates the chain of command formally, while running his actual institution beneath those accommodations, out of sight, in the gaps between what officers notice and what they don't. He has the 4th civilian inspector this quarter standing in his corridor, and she is, from his perspective, the same problem the other 3 were. A temporary presence with a clipboard, and no understanding of what it takes to run a real barracks. He is not trying to be cruel. He simply does not see her as a person whose presence requires courtesy. That is the insult. Not the shoulder, not the wall, but the category he placed her in before she said a word. Boone's play on day 0 was physical and public. Day 1, he goes cold. He works through channels, through the armorer, through paperwork, through the kind of pressure that is externally identical to procedure and therefore cannot be formally complained about. It is the signature move of a man who has managed a barracks for 11 years and understands that the most effective obstruction is the kind that generates a paper trail in the obstructor's favor. What he doesn't account for is that the woman in the business casual blazer has been reading procedure since she was 22 years old. She knows which documents to ask for before the armorer has time to consider moving them. The battalion supply cage opens at 0830. Staff Sergeant Prieto, compact, efficient, told informally by Boone the previous afternoon to slow the inspector down and log every exchange, arrives to unlock the second rack and finds her already inside, working the first. She calls serial numbers from memory. 1 line per second, flat tone, no inflection, flagging discrepancies without editorial comment, each flag stated and moved past before Prieto has time to formulate a response. 14 entries in the first 40 minutes. The count should take a trained armorer the better part of a full shift, because it requires knowing exactly what you're looking for before you open the first log. She already knows what she's looking for. She has known since before she entered the building. Prieto watches her for a few minutes, calculating. Then he shoulders into the space beside the weapons rack. Casual. The kind of physical encroachment men sometimes use to remind women that space is negotiable, and they have the greater claim to it. Fitzpatrick doesn't brace, doesn't shift her weight, doesn't pause mid-count. She continues from the number she left off, posture unchanged, contact registered as something below the threshold of relevant information. The armorer clears his throat and steps back. MOS 2111 inventory protocol, she says, still not looking up from the rack. Paragraph 4-7. I'll need the disposition records for the flagged serials going back 18 months. Prieto opens his mouth, closes it. He was told to slow her down. He locates the filing cabinet and opens it. She photographs 4 of the flagged rack entries, emails the images to a server address Prieto can read only partially over her shoulder. An HQMC domain prefix, an encrypted routing number, nothing identifiable past that point. She puts the phone away and does not take it out again for the remainder of the session. At 1100 hours, in the administrative conference room, Boone sits behind the table with very little moving in his face. He reads the armorer's count. 14 discrepancies in 40 minutes. The kind of count that takes a trained armorer a full shift, because it requires knowing exactly what you're looking for before you open the first log. He reads the number again. He picks up the desk phone, not the office phone, the desk phone that routes through a separate extension, and makes a call that costs him nothing except the acknowledgement that something about the woman with the clipboard is not what it appears. He does not make the acknowledgement aloud. Find out exactly what authority she's operating under, not who sent her. What document? At the corridor junction outside the supply cage, Lozano refills the water cooler and watches Fitzpatrick pack the clipboard at the session's end. He pulls a personal notebook from his jacket pocket. He writes something on the page, tucks it away before the page can be seen by anyone passing. She sends the email, puts the phone in her pocket. She doesn't look at it again for the rest of the day. There is nothing to check. She is already thinking about the motor pool. She is 2 racks further in her thinking than anyone in this battalion understands. The armorer reports up the chain by the end of the session. Boone reads the report in full. He reads the part about the HQMC domain prefix 3 times. He has filed 4 obstruction complaints against civilian inspectors in his 11 years running this corridor, and not one of them has ever emailed flagged serial records to an HQMC administrative server mid-session. That is not what civilian inspectors do. Civilian inspectors write notes. They file reports through their contracting office. They do not have direct upload access to HQMC. He considers that for a long time and does not reach a conclusion he's comfortable with. He picks up the desk phone again. He makes another call, this one to a contact in the battalion administrative section who owes him several favors. Pull the credentialing file on the DoD inspector. Everything. What school she went to, what previous assignments, what this office's contact number routes to. The contact says he'll have something by end of day. Boone hangs up and sits there thinking about an HQMC domain prefix. Boone doesn't confront her directly on day 3. That's the escalation. He gets the room to do it for him. 3 squad NCOs and the battalion admin chief, arranged around the barracks day room when she walks in at 1400 hours, all technically on separate business, all positioned where the sight lines converge on the entrance. It is a technique for making someone feel surrounded, without anyone having to admit they're surrounding someone. You learn it after a long time running an institution. You learn which arrangements make a space feel hostile without generating any statement that can be repeated at a formal hearing. Boone is very good at this. He assembled the room in 15 minutes and is now down the hall, apparently uninvolved. What goes wrong, from his perspective, is that PFC Trujillo is still in the room when it starts. Fitzpatrick enters for a supply locker audit. The 3 NCOs are at the tables with their notepads and separate business. Sergeant First Class Harlow, admin chief, 41, 16 years in, reliable in the specific way that means he will protect the institutional arrangement without needing an explicit order, has paperwork spread at the counter. Boone is absent, orchestrating from elsewhere. Everyone is on separate business. Within 2 minutes of her arrival, Harlow challenges her on a readiness form entry. He uses a slightly wrong doctrinal term for a recurring audit category, not wrong enough to be obvious to someone unfamiliar with the source document, but wrong in the way that signals he's learned it from practice rather than from the field manual itself. He delivers it with confidence. Fitzpatrick doesn't correct him. She uses the right term in her response, cites Field Manual Reference 10-12, NX Bravo, as she writes, and continues without looking up. Harlow goes quiet the way a man goes quiet when the person he was trying to out-credential knows the field manual better than he does. As the NCOs shift their weight and close the perimeter, tightening the room without touching anything, angling toward exits, making the space smaller without saying a word that could appear in a report, her eyes run a slow perimeter. Not a threat sweep, something more deliberate and more useful. She's making a seating chart, faces, positions, distances to the 2 exits, relative placement of every body between her and the door. Her pencil moves on the clipboard. The NCOs believe she is writing form notations. She is writing form notations. She is also writing a seating chart. Both are accurate. PFC Trujillo is 19 years old, 3 weeks assigned to this battalion. This afternoon she has the supply locker count, 11 entries left when Boone's voice comes through Harlow's radio, flat and certain. Clear the room. All non-essential personnel. Trujillo freezes. Her count isn't finished. Harlow turns toward her, ready to redirect. Fitzpatrick takes one quiet step to her left. It places her between Harlow's direct line of sight and Trujillo's position at the shelves, a geometric fact that would require Harlow to physically cross the room to undo. She says nothing. She doesn't acknowledge Trujillo. She asks Harlow a specific procedural question about a supply locker disposition form, the kind that requires his full attention to answer correctly without giving him room to look elsewhere while he's answering it. His eyes come back to her. Trujillo finishes the count. She marks the last entry. She closes the log. No one in the room says a word about what just happened. Nobody except Fitzpatrick even appears to know that it did. She closes the notebook, looks up at Harlow. Whatever he expected to find in her face after 3 days, discomfort, resentment, any signal that the room did its intended work, it isn't there. Her expression has not changed once. For the first time in 3 days, the admin chief finds that particular fact more alarming than anything else she has done. She documented everything, every name, every position, every face that looked at PFC Trujillo like she was expendable. Not one of them understood what she was writing down. Boone is not in the room, and his absence is as deliberate as his presence would be. He has learned over 11 years that there is a specific kind of pressure that requires the person applying it to be elsewhere. That institutional weight is most effective when it is distributed through other people and cannot be traced directly to its source. The 4 men in this room are each doing exactly what Boone has communicated to them through implication and through years of understood expectation that they should do. None of them were told explicitly. None of them would report a direct instruction if asked under oath. The communication happened in the way that most barracks communication happens, in the space between what's said and what everyone already knows. PFC Trujillo, when the NCIS interview comes, will not be able to articulate exactly why she felt like the wrong person in the wrong room that afternoon. She will say the NCOs seemed to be waiting for something. She will say she felt like she was in the way. She will say that the woman with the clipboard asked Harlow a question at exactly the right moment. She will not, for a long time, understand what that moment cost the woman asking it. The most sophisticated thing Boone has done is on paper. He goes home on day 5, Friday, and builds something meticulous. 3 incidents, reframed as procedural violations, each technically defensible, each timed to hit the base access office first thing Monday morning. The language is calibrated for the specific review standard that DoD Inspector General credentials run through when challenged. The dates are exact. The incident descriptions are precise in the particular way that precision signals someone who has run these forms before, not someone who encountered the forms for the first time on a Friday evening. He spent a real weekend on this. That tells you something about the man, not that he is disciplined, but that he is afraid. And fear makes him disciplined in ways that ordinary confidence does not. Lieutenant Colonel Enright presents her with the formal letter at 0900 hours on day 6. Obstruction of operations complaint. Civilian Inspector S. Fitzpatrick. Her DoD credentials are flagged for base access revocation in 48 hours, unless she can produce an authorizing document the battalion has not seen. He reads the key language aloud and watches her face while he does it. She sits across from his desk, with her hands flat on her knees, no crossed arms, no defensive shift in posture, no adjustment to her breathing, no change in the interval between her blinks. The stillness is not passive, it is load-bearing. Enright has given this speech to difficult contractors before. He does not know what to do with a reaction that gives him nothing to push against. Base JAG. Captain Vasquez, 27 years old, 9 months in the assignment, still learning to read the shape of the edge cases, reviews the complaint as part of standard processing. He reads it twice. The complaint is a neat piece of work. Too neat. The dates are too precise. The language is calibrated for the review standard in a way that a sergeant major writing alone over a weekend typically does not achieve on the first draft. It reads like someone with institutional access to the processing criteria, someone who has processed these forms from the inside before. He flags it internally as procedurally unusual, routes a copy to his supervisor with a note attached, and marks in his own file that the gap between technically defensible and factually accurate is where most of his interesting cases begin. He doesn't know what to do with the flag yet. He keeps it. 3 incidents. The weapons accountability session, reframed as unauthorized disclosure of inventory data to an unverified party. The dayroom visit, reframed as interference with scheduled NCO administrative duties. An overheard hallway conversation, reframed as coercive questioning of enlisted personnel without a commanding officer present. All real events, all reframed. Built by someone who has spent 11 years managing the paperwork of a barracks and knows exactly which frames the system's review process accepts without pushback. She reads the complaint in full without interrupting Enright once, sets it on his desk, takes out her personal notepad, writes down the document's official control number. Just the number, not the language, not the incident summaries, not the names attached to the complaint. Just the number. She thanks the lieutenant colonel for his transparency, declines to make a statement for the record. Leaves. The clock starts at 0900. 48 hours. She hasn't touched the motor pool transfer records yet. The ghost roster goes at least 4 levels deep. She found the first level on day 3. The access revocation complaint has a document control number in her notepad. She already knows what she sent. She already knows where it went. There are 3 more levels under the first, and the trail she has been building since day 1 only needs 1 more piece to close. Vasquez takes the complaint home that evening. He reads it again at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and his administrative manual open beside it. The construction bothers him in a technical way he can't fully articulate. Each incident description has the exact number of words required to establish a prima facie case. No excess, no deficiency. The date stamps are to the minute. The incident category codes are correct, which is not something most sergeant majors would know off the top of their head. It requires looking up the processing codes in the DoD Civilian Conduct Standards, which is a document most Marine NCOs have never opened. Either Boone spent significant time researching the form criteria before writing, or he has done this before and knows the criteria from experience. Both explanations bother Vasquez, each in a different way. He closes the manual. He makes a note in his personal file. Complaint construction inconsistent with field-written document. Request peer review before processing. The following morning, he routes the complaint to his supervisor with the note attached. His supervisor reads it and gives him a look that means he understands the concern and will file it appropriately. Vasquez doesn't know if that's enough. He doesn't have anything more concrete to offer. He keeps the copy on his desk. The memory comes back to Lozano on day 4. 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of his off-base apartment, running the corridor incident again, the way you run something when you know the answer is in it. Somewhere, and it hasn't surfaced yet. Then it breaks open. The sweep, the specific economy of it, the way her eyes ran the complete arc with the head barely moving. He has seen that exact motion in exactly one context, a joint deployment out of a Philippine base the year before he retired, observing a planning session for a classified operation he was not read into. The officer who ran the planning session was identified only by call sign, Onyx 6. He carries the identification carefully for 8 days, turning it in his head, deciding what it's worth and who it's worth telling, and what it means that someone running Onyx 6 is in a barracks corridor holding a DoD civilian clipboard. On day 12, he decides. Maintenance break room, 1915. He sits alone at the table for 20 minutes before he dials. The number is not in his contacts. It is in his head. The administrative line for the HQMC Inspector General's office. Memorized because Lozano has a habit, built over a long career, of memorizing numbers attached to things that matter. It connects to a civilian assistant on the night rotation. He gives no name. Tell whoever sent Onyx 6 that a sergeant major named Boone filed a revocation complaint. She's got maybe 36 hours before they pull her DOD credentials. The assistant asks for his name. He says, "She'll know. Tell her, Hotel November, Bravo Deck." He hangs up. The following morning, Captain Vasquez walks the corridor near the armory and passes Fitzpatrick reviewing a motor pool transfer form. He notices, stops walking because he's noticed, that her eyes track the entry point, the duty desk, the armory door window, and the emergency exit in roughly 4 seconds. Head movement, less than 1 degree. No pause in reading the form. No shift in posture. She continues down the corridor without looking at him. He stands in the hallway for a moment, watching her go, trying to name what he just saw. He can't. He doesn't write it down. He will think about it for 2 days, and at intervals after that, for considerably longer. Someone above grade, unidentified, no name on the action. The notation in the system reading only, administrative hold, pending review, authority. HQMC places the access revocation filing on hold. A single instruction to the base access office. Pause processing pending further documentation. The hold notification moves through Enright's staff to Boone's desk. He looks at it for a long time. He looks at it the way you look at a thing that shouldn't be able to happen, but has happened, and you don't yet understand what force moved it. The notification reaches Fitzpatrick's secure phone at 0611. She reads it, puts the phone in her pocket, walks directly to the motor pool records office, and opens a new inventory log, a section of the battalion she has not touched yet. The clerk behind the desk has never had anyone request records before 0700 hours. He is still assembling his coffee. She asks for the transfer records from the past 6 quarters, and he gets them, because her lanyard says she can ask for them, and the lanyard is right. Hotel November, Bravo Deck. 3 words, and somewhere in the chain of command, those 3 words were enough to freeze a formal administrative action cold. Who exactly was the woman with the clipboard? Lozano sets the phone on the break room table. He sits and looks at the wall for a long moment. Then he says, quietly, to the empty room, "God help them." He means Boone. He means all of them. She is in the motor pool records office for 6 hours on day 12. The motor pool clerk, 23, been in the job 8 months, brings her a second cup of coffee at 1000 hours, and watches her work from the other side of the counter when he has nothing else to do. She never asks him for help. She knows exactly which binders she needs, and asks for them by quarter and document type, not by shelf location, which means she has mapped the storage system already, either from a previous visit he doesn't remember, or from the battalion's administrative records, or from some source he can't account for. She pulls 6 quarters of transfer logs, cross-references them against the payroll dates in a ledger she's brought in her own bag, and flags entries in pencil with a notation system he can't decode. At 1600 hours, she photographs 22 pages. She thanks him. She leaves. The motor pool clerk tells his girlfriend about it that evening. He says, "I don't think she's a regular civilian inspector." His girlfriend asks why. He says he isn't sure. He says it's the way she knew which binders to ask for. 0100 hours. The room is impersonal in the specific way that temporary officer quarters are impersonal. Rack, desk, window with blackout blinds pulled against the installation's ambient light. The laptop screen is the only illumination. It gives her face the flat, focused quality of someone working a problem that has a solution and is close enough to the solution to see its shape. On the screen, pay records, columns of them. Weapon serial blocks sorted by date of transfer. Training credit entries that do not correspond to any documented live fire event in the past 6 quarters. She is cross-referencing motor pool transfer logs against payroll dates, and the architecture emerging from the columns is exactly what the 9 months of preliminary inquiry suggested it would be. A structure built on the assumption that no one would examine all its layers simultaneously from the same vantage. 6 quarters. 11 ghost personnel. Training credits against exercises that never occurred. She has been looking at all the layers simultaneously for 18 days. The secure phone shows an incoming message. Encrypted header. HQMC. IG admin. Onyx 6. Status check. Day 18. She types back. On track. Ghost roster confirmed to 4 levels. Motor pool transfer chain flagged. Do not contact on open line. The app shows her full identifier at the header of the thread. Major S. Fitzpatrick, USMC, HQMC IG, call sign Onyx 6. She is not a civilian. She has never been a civilian. She closes the message and goes back to the motor pool sequence, running it under her breath, the way you verify a pattern by speaking it in the right order. A practice from years of pre-operation briefings, where the sequence matters more than any individual element. The language that comes out is automatic and exact. Bravo element holds the south bulkhead. Delta takes the egress corridor. Primary asset moves on my mark. The cadence is from a briefing she gave in 2024. She catches herself, stops, returns to the columns on the screen. She takes the photograph from the inside pocket of her jacket. Nighttime. Shot from altitude. The compression and flat contrast of a surveillance feed rather than a camera lens. An anchorage, a vessel at rest in contested water, a geography that has no official record of her presence in it. She looks at it for a moment. She is 30 years old. Naval Academy, class of 2018. 8 years commissioned. 2nd lieutenant, 1st lieutenant, captain. MARSOC screening and selection. Multiple classified deployments. Across AFRICOM and CENTCOM, early promotion recommended. Then, 2024. A classified joint MARSOC and SEAL extraction of a captured U.S. intelligence asset from a PLA-held vessel anchorage in the South China Sea. 22 hours. 2 MARSOC teams and a SEAL element operating in full blackout off PLA radar coverage. The asset moved to a secondary location at hour 14 when the original extraction route was compromised by a change in vessel position. 1 team's communications partially down. No sleep for the last 16 of the 22 hours. Every decision made in real time, assessed in the field, documented afterward in a report that does not appear in any accessible system. She brought the asset home. She brought every operator home. The promotion to major came the following month. Early selection. The photograph is the only artifact she kept from that operation. 14 months ago, she traded a rifle for a clipboard. The mission did not change. Only the weapon. She sets the photograph face down on the rack. She closes her eyes. Then she says, quietly, once, in the dark, where no one in the world can hear it, the name of the intelligence asset she brought home from that vessel. She never says it out loud in any room with anyone in it. She says it here. She closes the laptop at 0200. She sits in the dark for a moment. The blackout blinds are fully drawn, but she can hear the flight line through the window, a distant engine on approach, the particular white noise of an installation that never fully sleeps. She has been an officer for 8 years, and a MARSOC-attached operator for 4 of them. And the thing people on the outside of that work never understand is that the difficulty is not the danger. The difficulty is the maintenance of clarity. the ability to look at a situation with the same precision on hour 22 that you brought to it on hour 1, when the comms are partial and the asset has moved, and the extraction route is no longer the extraction route, and the decision has to be made in the next 40 seconds, or the window closes. She has made that decision. She has made versions of it in barracks, corridors, and supply cages and day rooms over the past 18 days. The scale is different. The discipline is the same. Boone has spent 24 days dealing with a problem that will not resolve. His instinct when cornered is to attack the record, to make the paperwork say what reality won't, and that instinct has served him for 11 years of barracks administration, because the system accommodates people who know exactly where its seams are and how much pressure those seams will bear. What he does not understand about this particular piece of paper is that she photographed the original on day 3. What he is about to do in the safety log office is not damage control. It is a federal charge with a date stamp, a time stamp, and a witness angle built into the photograph metadata of a document filed 12 days ago. 0900 hours. He enters the safety log office with his administrative key card. He opens the live fire safety log to the day 3 training event, the entry that lists her as a witness observer to the exercise. He removes her presence from the record. He writes a replacement witness signature in the witness line. S. Fitzpatrick. He copied the name from the photograph on her DoD lanyard badge, which he captured on his personal phone on day 0 when she was picking up the folder from the deck. The entry is now a federal document bearing a forged signature on a federal safety log. He locks up. He leaves. What Boone does not know. On day 3, before the training event concluded, Fitzpatrick photographed the original safety log entry from 3 separate angles and emailed all 3 to the HQMC Inspector General server. The originals have been on file for 12 days. The comparison document that makes the forgery provable and prosecutable was filed before he picked up the pen. That afternoon, she enters the safety log office on a scheduled walkthrough, opens the log to the relevant page. Her eyes move left to right, top to bottom. The systematic reading pattern she applies to ink on paper the same way she applies it to rooms. She reads the pressure variation in the pen strokes, reads the ink inconsistency across the signature line, the slight angle change that happens when a person writes a name they haven't been writing for 30 years. The clerk in the corner of the office is sorting a filing cabinet with his back mostly toward her. She photographs the page from 3 angles, unhurried, without expression, without any change in her face or her posture that would signal to anyone observing that this page is different from any other page she has documented in this building. A forged signature on a federal document is not a lapse in judgment. It is a confession with a date stamp and a witness angle built into the photograph metadata. She looks at her own name, written in his handwriting. Then she looks up. Boone is in the doorway. He came back to check the log, to confirm the entry reads the way he left it, and he is standing there, watching her read what he put there. And for the first time across all 24 days, across every corridor shove, every armory session, every arranged room, every administrative proceeding, the corner of her mouth moves. Small, private. 2 seconds. It has nothing to do with humor. It has to do with a case that just became complete, in the way a case becomes complete when the subject hands you the last piece himself. She photographs the page, closes the log, thanks the clerk, and leaves. She sits in the driver's seat of her car for exactly the length of time it takes to make one encrypted call. 6 words. She hangs up. She drives back to the visiting officer's quarters. Boone goes to his office, sits down. He sits there for a long time, trying to understand what he saw in her face, and he cannot name it. And the fact that he cannot name it is the most frightening thing that has happened to him in 28 years of service. He should have asked the question on day 0. He is 3 days past the point where asking would have changed anything. The forgery is the point of no return, and Boone knows it, in the way that you know something you are already past the point of stopping. He committed to this play somewhere between day 24 and this morning, in the space between the recognition that the administrative hold on his revocation complaint was not a mistake, and the decision that attack was the only option left. He is a man who has spent 28 years in institutions and understands their pressure points, and knows that the most vulnerable thing in an administrative proceeding is the paperwork, because paperwork can be altered, and the original is only as permanent as the person who controls the office. He has controlled this office for 11 years. He does not know she photographed the original 12 days ago. He does not know she has been filing documentation to HQMC since day 2. He knows only that the log is there and she is in it. And if he can make the log say something different, he gains 12 inches of administrative ground. 12 inches of ground, and a federal charge he doesn't see coming. Boone's final move is to use the forgery against her, to present the altered safety log as evidence of her misconduct, rather than his own. He convenes a formal administrative hearing, assembles battalion leadership, prepares a 3-page written statement that builds the argument carefully and without raising its voice. The strategy is technically reasonable. He holds the pen, he was alone in the safety log office, and no one in this battalion knows she photographed the original 12 days ago. It is reasonable until the door opens. After that, everything that follows happens very fast. Battalion briefing room, 1100 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Enright at the head of the table. JAG Captain Vasquez to the side with his legal pad, summoned with an incomplete explanation of the proceeding's purpose. 2 NCO witnesses. Boone in Service Alphas, statement in front of Enright, complaint formally on the record. Fitzpatrick across from him in civilian clothes, DOD credentials on the table. Nothing in her posture that has changed across 27 days. Boone presents the complaint. He is accomplished at this particular mode, deliberate, documented, giving Enright nothing to push back on without more information than Enright currently has. The strategy is that she has no way to prove the forgery isn't hers. The strategy holds until the door opens. The door opens. A lieutenant general enters. 2 HQMC staff officers follow in Service Alphas. The room comes to attention the way a room comes to attention, when the rank is high enough that it arrives with its own gravity, immediately, completely, without command. The Inspector General of the Marine Corps does not call at ease. He looks across the table at Fitzpatrick. She comes to attention. She renders a hand salute, crisp, formal, military geometry from fingertip to cover line. Nothing of a DOD civilian contract auditor in any part of it. The Lieutenant General returns the salute. The exchange lasts 2 seconds. For everyone in the room who has spent 27 days believing she was a clipboard-carrying civilian readiness inspector from the administrative side of the Department of Defense, 2 seconds is enough. The Lieutenant General turns to Enright. His voice is even, unhurried. The voice of a man who has walked into rooms that needed to be unmade before and has never needed volume to do it. The individual your battalion has spent 27 days attempting to obstruct is Major Sylvia Fitzpatrick, United States Marine Corps, assigned to my direct staff. She entered this installation under Inspector General authority on day 0. Whatever she found in this building, she found legally, she found completely. And every document she has collected belongs to my office. I'd recommend this proceeding conclude. Boone's mind runs the last 27 days backward, and it runs fast. The weapons rack counts, the 14 flagged serials, the dayroom seating chart he never knew she was making, the access revocation complaint he built on a Friday night and believed was airtight, the safety log entry he altered yesterday to use against her. She was building a case from day 1. He fed her every piece. He handed her the last piece himself. And the original safety log photograph has been sitting on a server at HQMC for 12 days. He is looking at a federal charge for forgery of a federal document, and he has no defense for it because he committed it alone, and she photographed the original before he touched the pen. Lozano stands at the corridor window with his toolkit at his side. He doesn't go in. He doesn't need to be in the room. He watches the salute through the glass, the geometry of it, the certainty in it, the way it answers every question he has been carrying for 27 days. He watches Boone's face move through the sequence. Confusion, because she rendered a military salute, and she is supposed to be a civilian. Disbelief, because Major means she is 30 years old, and she looks younger. Recognition, because every flagged serial and forged signature and motor pool transfer she documented now lands in the correct category. And then horror, because he handed her the last piece himself, and the original is already on a server, and he is looking at federal charges. Enright, at the head of the table, looks at Boone. He looks at Fitzpatrick. He looks at the lieutenant general. He has been trying for 27 days to stay neutral on what he characterized to himself as a civilian audit problem. He sees now that it was never a civilian audit problem. He sees that the correct category was an Inspector General investigation, which means everything Boone filed, every complaint, every credential challenge, every formal proceeding in this room today goes into the investigation file as additional evidence. He does not say this aloud. He doesn't need to. The JAG captain has already written it down. Fitzpatrick places her phone on the table. She opens the photograph of the Day 3 safety log, the unaltered original, time-stamped, 3 angles, and slides it across to the JAG captain without a word. Vasquez picks it up. He looks at it. He thinks about the corridor outside the armory. The 4-second sweep. He thinks he begins to understand. The handcuffs close. The briefing room empties. The corridor outside is quiet. The long, institutional quiet of a building that has just become a crime scene. And the only sound is the deliberate measure of Boone's boots on the deck. Conspiracies don't unravel slowly. Once the structure is breached, the collapse is sequential, because every element was load-bearing, and the weight has nowhere to redistribute. Boone built something that held for 6 consecutive quarters, because no one looked at all its layers simultaneously. Fitzpatrick looked at all of them for 27 days. Day 28, 0600 hours. NCIS arrives at the barracks in 2 vehicles. 4 NCOs, 1 civilian payroll contractor, and Sergeant Major Darrell Boone are placed under formal investigation. The charges: UCMJ Article 107, false official statements; federal statute for forgery of a federal safety document; conspiracy to commit payroll fraud; weapons accountability falsification across 6 consecutive quarters. Boone waives his right to make a statement. His lawyer is already on the phone before the agents finish the intake paperwork. PFC Trujillo is called as a key witness. The supply locker count she completed on day 3, the count Fitzpatrick shielded her to finish by taking 1 quiet step to the left, contains a serial number that connects the ghost roster payroll scheme to a specific weapons transfer event 3 quarters prior. Her work, protected in a single unspoken beat 4 weeks ago, is the final evidentiary link in the chain. She is 19 years old. She gives her statement clearly and completely. She does not yet know what she did or who made sure she had the room to do it. Captain Vasquez receives a formal commendation for flagging the access revocation complaint as procedurally anomalous on day 6. The flag preserved the administrative record, which proved material to the obstruction case. He reads the commendation twice. He thinks about the corridor outside the armory, the 4-second sweep, the degree of head movement, the thing he saw and still cannot fully explain in language that would make sense to someone who hadn't seen it. He files the commendation. He will think about it for a long time. NCIS interviews Lozano as a material witness to the Day 0 incident and to the anonymous phone call on Day 12. When the agent asks how he recognized Fitzpatrick as a military operator, Lozano is quiet for a moment. Then, the way she scanned a room. The agent writes it down. Lozano doesn't elaborate. Some knowledge takes 30 years to earn, doesn't translate into a deposition. 6 quarters of fraudulent payroll entries, 11 ghost personnel, weapon serial blocks transferred through an unofficial ledger that no one was supposed to have access to. Live-fire training credits issued against exercises that never occurred. The inquiry Fitzpatrick opened 9 months ago closes in a single morning. 6 men, 27 days. 1 woman with a clipboard and a document control number written in the margin of her notepad. If that did something to you, keep going. 3 weeks later. Early morning, low light, the airfield side of the installation. She stands near the flight line perimeter with her hands in her jacket pockets. The visiting officer's quarters behind her are empty. The motor pool records have been boxed and transferred to HQMC. The barracks corridor is exactly as it was on Day 0, except that it is no longer Boone's corridor, and that distinction is structural. She is 30 years old, cleared for the next assignment. She doesn't yet know what it is. Her secure phone buzzes. She reads the message once, 3 lines, a call sign, hers. A name she has not seen in any document since a classified briefing in 2024. Colonel Tao Wen, PLA Naval Infantry. And a theater she last appeared in 2 years ago, in the dark, on a vessel with no official record of her presence in its anchorage. The South China Sea. She reads the message again, puts the phone in her pocket, looks at the horizon, not the airfield fence, not the flight line, not anything in the immediate foreground. At the horizon. The way you look at distance when you are already calculating what it will take to cross it. The case was closed. The ghost roster was gone. And somewhere in the South China Sea, a man with a name she recognized had started moving. She was 30 years old. She put the phone in her pocket. She already knew the answer. The commendation for Vasquez goes into his file. He reads it, folds it, puts it away. He has been a JAG officer for 9 months. He has learned in that time that the interesting cases are the ones that bother you before you have language for why. He flagged the complaint because something in its construction felt wrong. He was right that something was wrong. He doesn't yet know if that's a useful instinct or if he just got lucky. He thinks about it, at intervals, for the next several months, and eventually decides the distinction doesn't matter. What matters is that he filed the note, and the note became material, and a 19-year-old Marine named Trujillo gave a statement that closed a case 9 months in the making. Some things you don't get to see the full shape of until they're over. He thinks about the corridor outside the armory. He thinks about the 4-second sweep. He thinks he might finally understand what he saw. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.